start off with NetBeans, and this is the one that I'm using, NetBeans, and I'm going to go to File, and I would create a new project, and I would choose not Java. All this time we have been using Java, but I'm going to choose JavaFX. Okay, and the option that I will choose is the JavaFX application. Okay, now you could also use the FXML application. This is where the FXML component, the FX document, is already created. Okay, but I'm not going to choose this because to write the FX document I'm going to use the scene builder. Okay, so I would choose the very first option, which is the JavaFX application, and I'm not going to put anything in the filter. I'm going to go to the next one, and let's say I'm going to create this tip calculator. Okay, now I am not going to create the application class. Remember, if I put this application, if I choose this one, then the application class, the main class, already gets named. So you can create this, or you can leave this thing open. Okay, so I'm going to leave it open. So I'm going to say this one is going to be my tip calculator, right? And look to see where your NetBeans projects are located. It's important because as we look into other applications, sometimes you might have to bring in an image, and it's important that your image gets placed in this folder structure. So in my case, it's in my documents, it's in my NetBeans, and then I create this project called tip calculator. So when I open it up, I would see tip calculator, and it would have my source and bins and everything. So if I click on my source, that's when I'm going to have my Java class, and that's where you need to have your image folder if you need to. So my project name is called tip calculator, and I'm going to click on finish. So at this point, so here is my tip calculator right here. Okay, at this point I have my source package and my library. So I'm going to come over here and right click on this, and I'm going to say new, and I'm going to create my Java class. Okay, and remember, in this Java class, the only thing I'm going to do is create a main method. Okay, so let's do this class called tip calculator. Okay, so this is my Java class, and I'm going to click on finish. Now this is a code that I've already written, so I am going to bring in the code that I have already written earlier. Okay, so and I could have gone in and started writing it, but I'm just going to copy paste it because I've already written it. So here is my tip calculator, which extends application. Okay, and I'll go through the code in just a minute with you, but let me finish the structure first. Now also remember, this is my main method which calls in which extends application. So this is my main class called tip calculator, and it is going to house the main method, and the main method would actually call this launch method, which would create this stage and would then load everything. Okay, now you see this thing over here. This is very important, this tip calculator.fxml. This resource, the way I have named it, it also need to be included in my FXML document, because see, it is get resource. This is a method which is going to call in the FXML. Okay, now let me now bring in the controller. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, and again I have written out my controller. So, and this code is already in the book, so you should have everything. So I'm going to bring in my controller over here. Okay, actually before I bring the controller, let me bring in the FXML, because I've already done the scene builder. So I'm going to go to File and sorry, I'm going to go to my projects and I go to tip calculator, right click, and I'm going to say new. See how I have an empty fxml? If you don't see the empty fxml, you can just go to other and then choose JavaFX and then this empty fxml. Okay, now since I've already used it before, that's why when I come over here and I come to new, this is already added to my list, and it's a pretty intelligent editor. So I'm going to create this empty fxml, and this one I'm going to call it, and the general trend is that I've already created this through the scene builder. Okay, and if you follow the book, it will show you, you open your scene builder and you would save the file as a tip calculator fxml. Okay, so I'm going to say tip calculator. Okay, and I would say next. Okay, now when I do this, this is where you have to be careful. If you click on use the Java controller, then automatically this controller is going to be created. And as soon as this controller gets created, I can, take the code with my controller and bring it over here. So if I do this, now I already have a tip controller that gets created. Okay, so let's say I do next, and I don't need this, and I'm going to, this is my empty controller at this point. Okay, I have to come in and add the resource in this, but let me bring in my fxml. Okay, so now this tip calculator fxml by default, okay, this is very important. See how it's the tip controller. So by default, this is what it's created, but I have already created my fxml, so I'm going to come in and put the entire fxml right over here. Okay, so now I have the fxml, and this is the most important thing. This fx controller, you have to name this tip controller correctly. Okay, now let's go to the controller, which is where I have to write this code. So now if I come over here, see this tip controller over here? If I now open my tip controller over here, this is where I need to add my code, which again I have already done. The book has the code, so I'm going to copy the code from here to over here. Okay, so now I have my tip calculator. Let's now bring in the scene builder to show you what my fxml looks like. Okay, so now if I open up my scene builder, okay, I'm going to come into File, Open, and I'm going to go to my NetBeans projects. This is, remember, I created that project, so I'm going to go to my NetBeans project, and I called it tip calculator. So here is my tip calculator. I'm going to go inside my source. Here is my tip calculator fxml. Okay, so I'm going to open this up. So let me show you. So right now, this is a blank window. Okay, actually what I'm going to do is, before I do this. Let me go over the code just a little bit, and before I bring this scene builder, hold on. So now here is my tip calculator.java. Remember, this is where I would call my main method. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. It's available class and select class. So now if everything goes okay, it should run, which I already did. Okay, now this is how, if it runs, this is how it's going to run. Okay, now once I put in a value, let's say 78.45, and I can slide it. See, I can go up or down. Now this one is going from 0, 1, 2, 3. You can actually change it where it would increment by 5 or 7 or 10. So if I say, okay, I want to say 13% tax, and if I calculate this, it's going to tell me that my tip is 1020, my total is 88.65. All right. So here is the working application. Now remember, I was showing you the scene builder. Look at what my scene builder did. So here is my scene builder. Now at this point, my scene builder allowed me to open this up. Okay. So this is the one, this is the grid pane that I brought in. Remember the layout that we were referring to? So this is my layout. And I can bring these things to my containers, and here is my control. So I can bring in my buttons and checkboxes. Okay, color picker, combo boxes. Okay. And of course you have your menu. You can bring in shapes, but let's keep it simple at this point. So this is my container. So I brought in, I can bring in a dialog pane. I can bring in, these are different kinds, flow pane, grid pane. So I brought in a grid pane. So this is what I brought in. So, okay. So here in my document section, it shows me that this is my grid pane. So this is this document, and it is broken out into 2 rows. It is broken out into 2 columns. First column, 0 column, and 1 column. And then you have 5 rows. That's why it says 2, 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And everything is labeled. Now remember, this is all coming with 0 as your first row. So this is your 0 column. This is your 1 column, which in turn is 1 and 2. So this is how the scene builder looks. Now if you calculate, if you click over here, nothing happens. Okay. Now you can even preview this. So this is how it is. So if I go to tools, if I go to scene builder, if I go to preview, I can show in preview, and this is where now I can put in anything over here. But if I hit calculate, nothing works. This is still not tied to anything. Okay. So this is just a preview. But when I ran this program, this is now live. Okay, so this is now live. So let me go back, and here is the live version of the tip calculator. Now if I change this thing to 48.85, and I want to, I'm very happy with the percent, 21%, calculate, this is my value. Okay, now let's look at the code of this program. Right. So first off, here is my controller. So in this controller, here is all these fields that I brought in. Okay. So I brought in this entire set of library. Here is my tip calculator class. And then I have this private static final. Okay. Number format, currency, percent. Okay. And then see how what I'm using. I'm saying number format dot get currency instance. Number format dot get percent instance. So those 10%, 15%. Okay. And then you have another private big decimal. Remember that class that we had seen earlier? This is my variable name. It's a object, so called tip percentage. New big decimal 0.15. So that's basically your default. Okay. And then you have all these fxml controller code. Okay, so that's why you say fxml private text field amount text field. Now where is this coming from? This is actually coming from your scene builder over here. So here is the label, and this field is called your amount field. So if I come back, see, this is the property. So I can actually, make the font, change the font. I can change some of the features, the opaque insets, the color, the effect. I can look at the layout. Okay, so here is my layout, column index, row span. Okay, my alignment. So if I want to change anything on this alignment, all these things I can do over here. If I go to the code part of it, see how I can do. This is very important. So this is my amount text field ID. You've been a programmer, so you know that I need to define some kind of an ID so that I can actually extract the value from here. So this is my amount text field ID. Okay. Again, you can do a lot of other actions, on action, how you can change things, drag, drop, on, drag. So you can play with these things as much as you want. But this part is important. I want to see when I create this scene builder by dragging, dropping things in there. I brought in a label, I dropped in over here. I brought in the second level, I dropped in over here. It tells me exactly where it's going. It tells me what is the label associated to it. And then it gives me the ID of the individual fields. So that's my amount text field. Now look at this percentage label. Okay, if I now go to this part over here, okay, and again look at the ID. Here is my slider that is associated with it, but then this is my percentage. So this is my tip percentage. So this is actually the one that I need. Okay, so this is my tip field. So if I come over here, so this here tip text field, your total text field. So these are all associated with these private labels. Okay, so one is your amount text field, label text field. Look at what I'm doing over here. So now I have a private void method, calculate button press. Remember that event handler that we talked about? So this is where I'm passing this action event. Okay, so this is the action event, and this is the event that I'm passing. So what am I doing? I have this try and catch block. So I'm going to take everything or run everything to the try catch block. So again, amount, these are all individual objects of the big decimal. So amount, I would take the value in everything that is coming into the text field. That's why I say amount text field dot get text. So get text is the value when I'm typing it in. It is actually coming as a text, which is now associated with the ID that I've created. And now I create an amount object. Tip percentage is associated with tip. Total associated with the tip. And again, look at what I'm doing. So amount dot multiply. So with this, I'm multiplying the tip percentage. Remember, our basic one is set at 0.15, but I can move the slider to get what I want. Okay, so it's multiplying the tip and then it's adding the total. Okay, now my tip text field dot set text is the currency that I'm associating with. So currency dot format tip. Our total text field again set text currency dot format total. Okay, and here is my catch statement. So if it is set text, enter the amount and look at my initialize. So here is my currency, set rounding mode. So when I'm getting 48 point something, then it's basically telling me how am I rounding it up. So this is my slider dot value property add listener. So this is how I'm actually making that slider active by associating with the tip percentage slider. That is what my ID is, associating the value property dot action listener. Okay, new change listener number. So as I'm sliding those things back and forth, it is basically taking the value in. Okay, so that's your tip percentage. So whatever that value is, 0.15, 0.13, whatever that is, basically divide that by 100. So if you slide that thing, and then I'm taking that tip percentage and setting it to the tip percentage label. Okay, So that's my initialize. Here is my try catch. So it's a pretty simple program. Let's take a look at the tip calculator. This is the main program that I have. Okay. Here is the main part. So remember, I have my tip calculator, which is extending application. So tip calculator is a subclass of application. In this class called application, I have a lot of things. Look at all this import statement. I brought in my stage, I brought in my scene, I brought in a parent, I brought in an FXML loader. Okay. Now, first off, every time I have a main class, this is where the program would start. So in my main method, I'm calling this method called launch. Okay. Now launch is basically a method that comes out of the application class. Okay. It's actually a static method that comes out of the application class. Now this launch method actually brings in or creates this stage. Okay. So it actually passes through and calls for this method called start. And the start is where a stage gets created. Okay. So when I say public void start, so this launch method calls the start method, and start is a public method which would create that stage. So when I create that stage, I basically pass in the stage object here. And remember, this stage, this is the object, is coming from this class called stage. So what I'm doing is initializing. So I have this root scene that I create. Okay, so parent root, so it was calling me the FXML loader dot load, then get class. This is my method, and the get class basically calls this tip calculator FXML. Okay, so this get class calls this other tip controller method dot get resource. This is my FXML. So this is what ties that to my FXML file. Okay. So it's getting the resource, the entire scene builder that we use to create that FXML controller. Okay. Now look at what happens. This is pretty standard in every single main method you would create. So you would create a scene and you would bring in the root. This is your root that you actually captured from your class called tip controller and your FXML. So it actually, this is where it ties everything. So this is your root, and then to the stage, the blank, you're going to add this set title method, which you call it tip calculator. To the stage, again, you add the scene. So set scene, and this is your scene that you just brought in. That's coming from the root. So this whole thing is tying your FXML and the controller. Set scene and stage, again, we take the stage and call the show method, and show is what displays that. Okay, so this is how it's running. So as soon as that happens, it goes to the tip controller, and then this is running to the try catch, and this is where those individual text fields are associated with, and I just went through the code from here. So that's basically how you would run this scene builder. Okay, so this is the part when you create this, it allows you to drag and drop things from here. Now a couple things over here. When you create this scene builder, you can do a preview and show the preview. But if you create this scene builder, you can also go to view and look at the controller. You see this controller right here. So by default, every single field that you created, it creates that private @FXML. Now you need to go and add more to the controller. So basically what they tell you is you copy this code and then add it to the controller over here. So if you look at the controller, this is the part that actually came in when I created that scene builder. Okay, so I basically can control paste over here, but then I need to add more of these methods. So this is now I added my button pressed method, my initialize method, and then it associates everything to the code. All right, so that's how you would run your application. Hopefully it gave you a basic understanding of how it's going to work. I'm going to give you more examples from the next chapter.